Got Kyle Loomis here from E2C Network. It's not just Auburn football. Of course, you're going to get your big dose on Auburn football, but Auburn athletics across the board, the Auburn community, the Auburn family. So check it out. It's right here on YouTube. Kyle with the E2C Network. All right. Much was made of Hugh Freeze's golf game. Now, I understand from this that number one, he's a heck of a golfer.
Yeah.
Like, he can golf. And number two, I don't know if there was some kind of tracking system involved or if he's in a league where the number of times that he's on the course is being tracked, but how this got to be a thing that the likes of Lane Kiffin and others are. Well, Lane Kiffin dives into any type of
Right.
topic that he can get his hand on and get his thumb on the Twitter account. But what is going on with Hugh Freeze's golf game?
Well, it's much ado about nothing, in my opinion. It's what always happens in the middle of the summer where everybody, whether they admit or not, is done talking about predictions and, is this going to happen, that going to happen? We have to circulate things for clicks and things like that. What you've got here, and I've thought a lot, Mark, about how to spell this out for everybody, and I'm going to do my best job at explaining this today. I think it comes in three phases, three entities that kind of you have to work this through. So the initial story is that a report was published. Someone did some really deep dive research through a website, I think, about how often and how good, I guess, Hugh Freeze is at golf, and then chose to bring that information to light during a convenient time where there was maybe more negative press, especially on the recruiting trail for Auburn. So let's talk about it from a few different angles there. The easiest one is the troll fans. Any fan base, Alabama, Georgia, whoever, is going to take anything and run with it. And Auburn fans do it too, right? Not to make light of sometimes very serious issues, but we have a little fun at the expense of Georgia when it seems like every summer they have a traffic violation issue with their players there and have a lot of, call it speed you and all that kind of stuff. So troll fans are fans. It is what it is. You have your fun as long as you recognize that it's not really an important thing in the conversation. With the Auburn fans, this is a fan base that has different sects. You've got people, I think, that are a little bit more reasonable, a little bit more calm about things, want to see results, as we opened up the show talking about. But then you've got this side of the fan base that just can't rationalize that you made a bad decision several seasons ago that you're still working your way back from. And that takes more time than you're probably used to get back to where you should be. And Auburn is not where it should be right now. Let's be very clear on that. And so anytime that portion of the fan base can be stirred up, you're going to see that taken advantage of. I'll be 100% honest with you too, Mark. There's a political angle of this too. There's people that don't like Hugh Freeze because of his faith, because of his supposed political affiliations, and they may be opposite of those in some of the media. And they find any opportunity they can to take digs at this man on grounds that just don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. So to kind of pull this all together, I think you've got an opportunity here where Auburn's recruiting based off of stars and rankings at this current time isn't doing so hot, right? I think that's if you go onto the sites, you're going to see that. Had a bunch of decommits. There's a lot of things going on in the recruiting space. That was chosen to be brought out or right around this time so that you can maximize the impact of it. Everybody's a little upset. What's going on? Well, of course, it's because he's playing golf more often than he should be when he's been doing this the entire time. And may I remind you, has had several good recruiting classes here at Auburn and in his past as well. That's what he's been pitched and known as. And I would argue this point too, Mark, that it's not just that he's recruiting the stars and the rankings. He's actually getting those guys that he recruits onto the field early as true freshmen, true sophomores, and making them into all SEC type of guys very quickly. They're taking over the starting jobs of people who have been here for a while. So that tells you that he's finding the right guys and replacing those that aren't as helpful to the program. So all that to be said, I know I've gone a long time on this, so you can tell I've thought about this a lot. If this makes sense, it's much ado about nothing. Opposing fans, have your fun with it, but it means absolutely nothing, and Auburn fans shouldn't be spending an ounce of time or worry about it.
Folks, we do one watch party each month during the off season. We will ramp that up to one per week after, obviously, college football games are played on Saturday. We checked out the 2024 Rose Bowl last night with all of you. So if you're a channel member, you can take part with us on our watch party monthly classic game. And then again, once we get into the season each week. So be a channel member here at the Voice of College Football, and check out, of course, E2C Network with Kyle. All right. The quarterback situation is firmly entrenched on one hand, but I guess anytime you bring in a new guy who's had limited success at his previous stop, and the quarterback position itself has not been successful in recent years,
Right.
there still is a line of questions to be asked about if this is truly the guy and how he needs to be developed and coached.
Right. And so we're talking about Jackson Arnold. I think from day one, when he was signed by Auburn, most people assumed he would step into the starting role. And we're sitting here today, and all signs are apparent to that. Hugh Freeze is, while he has not said Jackson Arnold is the starter, he has said Jackson Arnold is the number one guy. He's talking like it. The coaches, the players are talking like that. And he came to SEC Media Days today. So that's about as much sign as you need to point towards who's going to be the starting quarterback. So there's not really a battle. There's not an issue. But what you pointed out is correct. Is he the guy? Is some of the problems that he had at Oklahoma going to translate over to here and continue? Or is this a fresh start? I heard that a lot today in SEC Media Days from him specifically, talking about, not in a derogatory way towards Oklahoma, but all parties involved just needing a fresh start. It didn't work. Sometimes we can say that about Brian Harsin. It didn't work. Where there are reasons for that, but it just didn't work. So I'm very optimistic and hopeful. I love the language that's being used by him, by the players around him, about how much they value his leadership. He talked a lot today about how he waited until he had earned the right to be a leader. They have this leadership council in the program, and he wasn't on it right away, as most people would think the quarterback should be on that, but he just got there. So he had to work his way onto it and be voted onto it. And so now he sits here firmly entrenched as a leader at the very least, but the 99.9% certainty starting quarterback. Is he going to be the guy that's the answer? I think that question is much deeper than just the quarterback position. The offensive line, as you have heard me say 1,000 times, has been inconsistent at best over the last several years. Not a shot at one particular player or another, just talking about the unit. But to me, it's a much deeper question than is Jackson Arnold the answer? Are all these pieces together the answer? But we're going to be answering that question with Jackson Arnold at the helm, it seems.
So, Kyle, if that offensive line is doing its job and allows Jackson Arnold to do his job, there's still a third component there. So the wide receivers have to do their job. And we know that there have been a couple classes of wide receivers that have been impressive in the recruiting rankings. And of course, Cam Coleman is at the top of that list. So the wide receiver position, how do you see it coming into 2025?
Yeah, I like to look at things that are the most obvious, things that we can look at with the most certainty when we're speculating about things. We know Cam Coleman's legit. I think we all saw that he had some injuries he had to work through last year and a little bit of a slower start at times. But if you take the beginning and the ending of his time in his first season at Auburn, he fits the part. He's a beast. And then you've got Malcolm Simmons, who's been there this past year, who is one of the more dynamic wide receiver options that we have. I know this has no bearing on the team, but in college football 25 and 26, I have a lot of fun throwing the ball to him because he is speedy. He is very good in space, and I love getting the ball to Malcolm Simmons. I love us, the Auburn Tigers, getting to the ball to Malcolm Simmons. So those are the two that I look at, and if you just start right there, that's enough for me to get excited about this season. Now let's throw in Eric Singleton from Georgia Tech. You and I have talked about him previously. A lot of hype around this kid. Jackson Arnold talked today at SEC Media Days about how fast he is. So the expectation is for Eric Singleton to come in and do what Keandre Lambert-Smith did last year and just step right in and take off and become one of the guys, if not the guy. I think Cam Coleman's going to have a space for that time as well. But those are probably your core three you're looking at. But I would ask you and Auburn fans to remember some other names as well. Perry Thompson. They talked a lot about Horatio Fields today. Jackson Arnold did. And I think they feel like he's getting slept on a little bit. He came over from Wake Forest. Sam Turner's a young name as well. Bryce Cain still there, part of that Freeze 4 class that you talked about. So the weapons are plentiful. The weapons are various. And certainly it's not from, there's no lack of that at the wide receiver position. Can you get the ball to them? Can you give the quarterback enough time to feel comfortable, to work through his progressions, to work the system that Hugh Freeze has? That's the big question to me.
This is, of course, the pinnacle of talking season, but it leads right into August camp. So we've been talking for months and months and months because the sport obviously is the shortest in season of any of the major sports. But then we talk more than anything right before we finally get to some football on the field as this team tries to work through some issues in August. So this is the time that people are laying out predictions and so forth. I'm not going to pin you down to that, but I'm going to somewhat pin you down to what's reasonable, what's going to be a successful season.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
I saw.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interject another thing here that tells us a lot about the landscape of college football. That Auburn, at least on the list that I saw of college football playoff. Now, this was not just to reach the college football playoff. This was to win the national championship. That Auburn places higher than I think it was every team in the Big 12.
I don't have any issue with that. If that is legit, I have no issues with that.
I was almost certain that that's what I looked at it on here. It was a couple months ago, which tells me that although Auburn's a long shot to make the playoff, that those powers that be in Vegas believe, okay, if you're in the SEC and you can make a playoff, then you're going to make the run, or you can make the run versus the Big 12 being overmatched. Yeah. So that was a bit eye-popping to me because I was trying to run the math in my head in terms of odds and saying, wow, they're really putting a lot on mid-tier teams in the SEC once they get there to have at least a puncher's chance. How ridiculous would that be for Auburn fans to have those kind of thoughts?
No, Hugh Freeze even said today at SEC Media Days that the expectation is for them to be in the conversation for the playoff. And I think that's what the expectation needs to start at. Auburn hasn't been in the conversation for the playoff in this new format yet, and that needs to happen this year, at least in some level. Like, you can't be out of it for the whole part of the year. There has to be some progress where Auburn factors into the equation somehow. Now, when we get to predictions, obviously, certain, you know me, I'm not a big prediction guy until we get much closer in the season, but I always talk about it this way. What is the expectation, or what should the expectation be for the program when you look across the whole story of Auburn? I think 8-4 is a bare minimum expectation that should be expected every single year to reach. I think Auburn is capable of that. I can think they can get the talent, the support, financial and just in energy, fan support, all that kind of stuff. And has shown just the ability to make miraculous things happen. Some people call it playing a nightmare in Jordan-Hare Stadium. They got all the tools are at Auburn's disposal. And I think that plays into also what you're talking about with that list. Yes, it's about being in the SEC. You're tested, but really it's about Auburn too. And they've seen Auburn do this time and time again, get underestimated and then come out and punch someone in the mouth. And before you know it, they're 2013, they're in the national championship game. Is that happening this year? I wouldn't venture to say that, but it would not shock me to find Auburn firmly in the conversation for playoffs in the middle of the year. I think this team's ceiling could be very high if all the pieces are fitting together this season.
Kyle Loomis, check out his channel right here on YouTube. It's Everything Auburn, E2C Network. Kyle, it's always good to see you. Thanks for dropping by, and we will catch up with you hopefully before Auburn hits the field.
Yes, certainly. Let's do it. There's going to be plenty to talk about in the Auburn space.
Awesome.